Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on what part of the world you're visiting us. Hi, I'm Daniel Marcos. Welcome to the Impact X podcast, where we help leaders be able to give 10 times the impact with half the drama. And by the way, we know drama. We've been scaling companies for many, many years, and we've been having a lot of conversations with amazing entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we all understand what's that we call drama. When you start a company, you usually just are in love with whatever is great and growing your company and having employees. But then we know what happens when you start scaling and all the growing pains. And we're going to talk a lot about that, but more on the financial aspect of growing a company and how to reduce drama with Alan Miltz. Alan, how are you?
Daniel, whenever I speak to you, I feel super excited. You've got such amazing energy.
Thank you, my friend. And I've learned a lot from you. And guys, you're in for a treat. Alan is an amazing thought leader and really understands finance. Let me tell you a little bit. Indeed, Alan, why don't you tell us your story? So where are you from? Where are you living now? I think it's very interesting. But then tell us about your last company and how you went to the dark side now to help entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. So I'm a South African. I'm born in Cape Town, which is the most beautiful seaside resort in the world, in my opinion.
It is beautiful.
And I went to school and university in South Africa. I started doing medicine. Don't ask me why I gave up, because I loved it. But my family were all in business. So I did finance and I did science at the same time. I'm a chartered accountant by training, but my family had a very large ladies' footwear manufacturing plant. So I loved the fashion industry. And when South Africa had its political problems, education was our best passport. And you were thinking, where am I going to live? I love South Africa. I don't like the politics, but I love the way of living. And Australia was the closest I could find.
Wow.
And traveling around the world, I happened to sit next to someone on the plane who was the founder of S1E2, the clothing company.
Wow.
Yes, he was the founder in Australia of S1E2. And he said to me on the plane, I know your background in South Africa. I'm a South African retailer historically. I'll give you a job to set up S1E2 footwear in Australia. And I took my chance. I arrived in Melbourne, a place I've never been to. I'd never been to Australia. And I worked at S1E2 for a few years, loved it, but realized I was unemployable. I had to work for myself. And I started to advise companies in the clothing industry. And wherever I went, I realized nobody understood the numbers. So companies were saying, business is great, revenue's growing, and I'd look at their financials and I'm thinking, am I looking at something different to you? So 3 of us got together. We were all South African chartered accountants, and absolutely, as a strange fact, in my opinion, we were the best trained accountants in the world. It was absolutely amazing.
Why?
South Africa, accounting was a very prestigious profession. There were not multiple bodies, and it was the best passport to use to work anywhere in the world.
Wow.
A large majority of South African CEOs are trained accountants. And I haven't found the same in other countries, but we have generated a whole group of experts out of South Africa who are amazing at financial analysis. So the 3 of us got together and we said, imagine if we could create software that would become a standard for banks, accountants, and companies to look at their performance. Business speaks Spanish, bank speaks Portuguese. It sounds the same, but it's different. Imagine if we all spoke one language. And our first target market was the banks. And ignorance sometimes creates creativity. All the banks were using the analysis tools by Moody's or S&P, absolute global icons. And these three South African immigrants thought we could do something in a different way. And we created a financial software program we called Optimist. One of the founders was a pessimist. So every idea he said no, we said, let's call the product Optimist. And that became our brand. 20 plus years later, my software today is used by over 500 of the global banks. Wow. It's one of the biggest banking systems in the world, but it sounds amazing on paper, but I made some major mistakes. We got diluted too quickly as we grew because we raised private equity and we sold the company too early. So today it's an absolute icon company in the industry, but I sold it too early and I got diluted. Two of us who are founders got together again and said, imagine if we could now focus on business. The numbers belong to everyone. Imagine if everyone in the company became a storyteller. And that was Cash Flow Story. And Daniel, today, about 5 years after forming Cash Flow Story, we're in 97 countries around the world. So it's been an amazing journey and a passion I haven't even started yet. We got so much more to do.
I just used it with a client an hour ago. I was pitching to a potential client to help them implement scaling up and take their company to market. And I told him, let me just show you one of the tools that we use. And I showed him Cash Flow Story, one of the testimonials that you have, one of the sample companies. And I love it because this happened in a board that I used precisely your tool, that the sales agent, the sales manager said, hey, I could grow revenue by 10% in the company. You just have to allow me to give 5% discount on the product. And I said, great, let me map it financially. And I mapped it financially, and you lost money in cash flow and profit. And the owner said, like, but he's raising revenue by 10%. And I was like, yes, but he has to lower pricing, and your margins are so small that it's going to eliminate all your profit. So you could not do it. And he was livid that he was seeing that. So I showed that example to his client, and the guy just like started shaking and said, where can we start? Like, it's just crazy what happened. So now that you went to the dark side, you want to work with entrepreneurs, with the CEOs. So tell me, how can you help them decrease that drama? And by the way, as you said, we don't know our numbers. Very few really understand their numbers. What's a conversation that you have with a CEO that they don't understand their numbers?
So the first thing is 2022, 2023. I've been back on the road, traveling again, which is my passion. And Daniel, I'm seeing the same three problems in every country I go to, whether it's Uganda or the United States. Supply chain, inflation, and the ability to attract and retain your key people. Those are the three problems I'm seeing. Never before have numbers been more important. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. Imagine if everybody in a company knew your story and they understood the levers they can manipulate to improve your story. So a comparison that I give, I'm a massive sports fan. I don't know if your audience follow English soccer.
Yeah, we do.
But in 2016, the greatest sporting upset ever happened. Leicester City won the English Premier League. They beat Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, iconic names that win every year. How did Leicester City win? There were no silos. Everyone understood the strategy. And after every game, they discussed the power of one. Imagine if every one of your listeners could become the Leicester City of their industry.
So it's like Moneyball in the US. The closest story in the US on the West it's Moneyball, right? Like they really understood the numbers, and they understood that getting in base, even if you throw really weird or whatever, that was matter. And that's exactly what these guys did in England, right?
Exactly. And And Daniel, every company I go to, the CEO says, my CFO understands the numbers, they know what they're doing, they're reporting. And today I sit on about 20 boards around the world. And when I get reports from the CFO, it's 30 pages of reports no one understands. And the ability to give this complex reporting, people think my numbers are in a safe set of hands. I've got the exact opposite philosophy, and it's called simplicity. Imagine if everybody understood the numbers in a simple way. Imagine if in every meeting, you didn't discuss the ratios, but you discussed improvement. And my philosophy in business today is to teach every person on the management team, even in the company, to play the game called make more cash. And
how do you play the game, make more cash?
Yes.
How do you play it? How do you teach them, and how do you play it?
Okay, so firstly, a story of numbers is like reading a book. Right. Every company loves their profitability. But profit is 1/4 of a 4-chapter story. Equally important to your profitability is what I call chapter 2, the 3 items of working capital. Are you collecting properly? How much inventory do you hold? Or in a service company, do you invoice your work frequently enough? And terms with suppliers. So chapter 1 is profit. Chapter 2 is working capital. The result of your business is chapter 4, your cash flow. And cash flow is not a complex topic. It's simply the movement in all your bank accounts. The missing chapter is chapter 3, the rest of your balance sheet, which I just call other capital. So when I look at a company, I don't give 30 pages of reporting. I talk about the 4 chapters. Everybody on one piece of paper can then say, this is my profit. Why is it so different to the movement in my bank account? Where's my money gone? And then the most important discussion is then around improvement. What are the levers we can change to improve profit, to improve cash, and to put your valuation on steroids?
So how do you drill down that with the team? As you said, not even the CFO understands their numbers. They expect the CFO to know it, not all the time. But then how can you drill down that to the rest of the team?
So if you said to me, Alan, the banks are using your software, you've got software in 97 countries around the world, what is the one thing you want to be known for? And Verne Harnish uses the most beautiful saying. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And I absolutely love it. Now, in finance, the power of one is your DNA. There are 7 levers you can manipulate in a company to improve profit, cash, and valuation. So a story of numbers consists of your profit, chapter 1, your working capital, chapter 2, the rest of your balance sheet, chapter 3, resulting in chapter 4, the movement in bank accounts, cash. Your management team are responsible for profit and for working capital. There are 4 profit levers: price, volume, margins, and overheads. Those are the 4 levers you can play with to improve profit. And for working capital, there are 3 levers: collections, inventory or work in progress, and payables. The cash flow story software looks at your numbers and it produces the power of 1. What do the 1% changes and 1-day changes do to profit and cash? Now, Daniel, so many companies are making decisions like, let's give a discount to sell more. Supply chain, price margins are dropping, inventory's going up, we need to pay suppliers quicker. People are not then saying, what are the other mitigants that I can play with to reverse the situation. Price and volume belong to your sales and marketing people. Cost of goods or direct costs belong to operations. Overheads, everyone in a company. Collections, the responsibility of your sales people and the finance people. Inventory, work in progress, operations, accounts payable, finance. How can you not train your people on the power of one when they impact those numbers? So every single company I work with, Daniel, repeat, repeat, repeat. I teach them the story of numbers, the 4 chapters, the power of one, in a simple way that the most non-financial person can understand it.
All right. So let me go a little bit back and before they work with you or before they understand their numbers. We know that not having cash generates a lot of drama. Indeed, you say a phrase also from Verne a lot, and I would love you to repeat that phrase. But let's talk about the drama that generates in a company when they don't know their numbers and they don't have control on their cash flow. They say, hey, I have $3 million profit, but negative cash flow, that's a lot of stress. So tell us about the drama that happens.
Well, firstly, Daniel, I can tell you now, and you've seen it, I've done case studies to tens of thousands of people. Yep. I put up a case study and I say to the audience, what's the profit? And everyone gets it. They read the number from the profit and loss. Pretty simple.
Yeah, your bottom line.
Bottom line. And then I say to them, tell me the cash flow of this company. And they looked at me, whether they're accountants or bankers or whatever, and they look at me and they think I've asked this question that's the greatest trick question on earth. And I get 10 different answers in every company. And I say to them, this is what's happening in your business every single month, every quarter. You're looking at your story and you're analyzing chapter 1 profit. Your story is 4 chapters. Your business is like a murder mystery. You guys are reading chapter 1 of the 4-chapter story and wonder why you don't know the result. You read a murder mystery and you read chapter 1, you never know who commits the crime. And that's what's happening in our business. So the first thing I find when I walk into the business is people are terrified of the numbers because the accounting profession has made it such a complex art. My answer is simplicity. Imagine if everyone in your company was taught to play the game called make more cash and repeat, repeat, repeat. Verne also says the traits of a good leader are the ability to predict, ability to delegate, and repeat, repeat, repeat. When you start to repeat, repeat, repeat the process, everyone then says, I love and I understand the numbers. Can we have a discussion around improvement?
Right. Sorry, I was writing some notes about it. So let's talk about the CEO. When the CEO doesn't know the numbers and takes decision on, yeah, let's grow revenue by 10% and now okay to lower your price by 5, right? Like what happens when they take decisions like that? And how do you talk with someone to get them to really learn how to take decisions based on data? Because it's fun and it's engaging to, I grew sales by 10% or by 50%. And we're all excited talking about sales, but we rarely see what happens with the profit and even less with the cash flow, as you mentioned.
Okay, so step number 1, CEOs in general rely on their financial advisor to produce the numbers.
Right.
So the CEO believes in their mind they're not responsible for the numbers, and my philosophy is different. My philosophy is you, CEO, if you're doing your role properly, you are responsible for achieving or running the company in color code green. So color code green means you're achieving your revenue targets, your margin targets, your profit targets, your working capital days are running in green, and therefore you're producing the right amount of cash. My philosophy is that cash is king, and you need to understand as a CEO the quality of your cash. So cash is the result of growth. You need cash when you grow. You need cash when you decline, the implications. But if you don't teach the management team the 7 levers, your management team are making decisions every day that might be detrimental to your business. So Daniel, I'll just finish that. Once you start to create a culture of visibility and you take away the fear factor, people realize this is not that complex.
But okay, but let's go back to the fear factor, right? Everyone's afraid of numbers. And when you tell the team, I'm going to show you numbers, they immediately get mad and they say, no, I don't understand numbers. I'm not going to get it. How do you overcome that?
Education.
Education.
So very much so.
Tell me a case.
So, as I said, I sit on 20 boards around the world. Without a question, every single board, when I started with them, the first thing I do is I say to them, let's do a valuation of your company today. And then I say to them, doesn't mean you're going to sell your business, but in 3 years' time, what do you want the valuation of this company to be? And it changes people's philosophy. You show them the journey that their strategy has to yield. Then you work back year by year and you say, each year, what valuation do we need to get? And then it's driving your... So valuation's based upon 3 key numbers: your profit, your cash, and your multiple.
Yep.
These are the 3 things that impact the valuation. As a CEO, your KPI is to improve profit, cash, and value. How can you not know the numbers when that's a key result of your effectiveness? And it can be done in a simple way. So fear should not be the issue. The profession, the accounting profession, has complicated something to protect our profession. But my philosophy is it can be done through simplicity. And some of the courses the Growth Institute runs are absolutely will change the philosophy of every business. And Daniel, this is another, what is one of the greatest business books you've ever read? Would you agree? Good to Great.
Yes, love it.
So Jim Collins studied companies who went from good to great.
Yep.
And when Jim interviewed these companies, when did you go from good to great? The answers were all innocuous. I don't know. We started to make the right decisions every day. Everyone knew what to do, and the flywheel started to turn. I get emails 2 to 3 times a day from somewhere around the world, companies I've never met. My cash flow's great. I phone them. When did it happen? I don't know. But I started to look at the 7 levers of the power of one in every transaction. These little 1% in one day changes have completely turned my company around.
Well, let me go back a little bit to valuations. You came up with something that is very important. The entrepreneurs, they don't see the valuation of the company. It's kind of in the back. They don't even care. And they grow the company. And then one day they're tired or something happened and they just sell it. So whenever you show them the valuation, how that changed their mindset and why it's so important to really understand your valuation and how to do strategy-based evaluation. Why is that so important?
So firstly, most companies think their business is worth more than what it really is. Because everyone thinks, my business is worth this. And then you say to them, well, let's look at your numbers and let's do a real high-level valuation, an indicative value. And then you start to prove it to them that your company from a high level is not that valuable. Then the CEO is listening. Then you say to the CEO, can I show you how to improve it? It doesn't happen overnight. Verne Harnish, in the book Scaling Up, says there are 4 decisions you need to master. We need to get a team of A players, a strategy that's differentiated. We know how to execute, eliminating leaky buckets, and then profit, cash, and value have to become the cornerstone of your thinking. So it's all 4 decisions that will impact your valuation.
But what happens when a CEO understands the valuation, how their mindset changes on how they run their company now that they realize their company is worth less than what they thought? And now they have this game and this kind of mindset to grow their valuation. What changes in the company and what changes on the decision-taking to get to grow the valuation?
It's fear. Most companies, when you show them the correct diagnosis and you show them where they could go if the company was running in color code green. So when you go to London and you get on the train or the underground, at every train stop, they say to you, mind the gap.
Correct.
What I say to every single company, let's look at your revenue, your margins, your profit, your working capital days, and see the gap you need to solve to get to your target or to get to your budget. And then you run your business in solving mind the gap. What does success look like? What do we need to achieve every year to run in color code green? And it's that consistent repeat, repeat, repeat. You go down the journey of financial visibility, everyone understanding the story, and then running your numbers, and you force success. One of the first things when I go into companies, I say to them, this is what we have to achieve. If you know your revenue, you know your margins, and you know the profit you want to get, the missing gap is your overheads. Tell me how we're going to run the business like this. And then you start to show them what does cash look like. Daniel, about 30 or 40% of companies I see, volume is detrimental to cash. They're growing broke. Every dollar they sell, they produce a margin, and then they think we need to grow volume. What they don't realize is that chapter 2 working capital is saying, don't you realize I need to fund you, margin? I'm stealing money away from you. About 30 or 40% of companies I see, chapter 2 is bigger than chapter 1, volumes detrimental to cash. And the salespeople then go and say, you know what? If we discount, we can even sell more. So people are making decisions without understanding the impact. Over and over again, I'm saying to you, if everyone in your company understands the power of 1 and understands what the 1% changes, it's the repetition of these little changes that will get you your profit, your cash, and your valuation target.
Right. Let's go to the 7 levers. Usually, the one that impacts the most is price. And companies spend very little time talking about price. And whenever you say you need to improve your numbers, they want to go to reduce cost and fire people and whatever. How do you get them back to the price, and why price so important in any business?
Firstly, I'm going to try and create a scenario.
Right.
If you put prices up by 1%, it goes straight to your bottom line. There's no impact on margin. There's no impact on overheads. Price goes straight to the bottom line. In the balance sheet, there's an impact in receivables because you need to collect that money.
Yep.
But if you grow your business through volume, the next dollar you sell, let's assume the company makes 30% gross margin.
Yep.
You sell $1 more, you make 30 cents, not $1 from
You
price.
spend the other 70, of course.
There's a cost, the cost of the good, the cost of the service. You've then, chapter 2 working capital says, you've made 30 cents, but I need to fund you. And so price will generate almost $1. Volume generates the margin less the working capital requirement. And price to volume sometimes can be 20, 30 to 1 sensitivity to cash. Every sales team I first talk to they say we can't put prices up. I then show them the power of one, and I say to them, let me show you what you guys are doing to this business. You guys are making decisions. Every single time, and Daniel, I've done this on a myriad of your programs, people look at me and say, absolutely, I can put prices up by 1 or 2%. Even if we lose a little bit of volume, we're better. It's create that visibility, show people what they're doing to your company.
Once they've seen the impact, now it's easy. Yeah.
Yes. You've got to create that visibility without making it complex.
Now, but let me go back to the example that you were saying, because I thought you got something really important. If I have a company that have a 10% bottom line, that's a net profit, and I raise the price 1%, just raising the price 1% will grow my profit by how much? Because it goes straight to the bottom line, as you said.
Correct.
Instead of having 10, now I have 11. So
correct.
1% growth of price has an impact of 10% in profit.
Correct.
It's crazy, the multiplication. If you do $1 more of volume, you just get 30 cents. So you're going to get a 3% instead of a 10%.
And you need the working capital funding to fund volume.
And you need to fund the working capital. That's another one that you're not expecting. By the way, you always said growth sucks cash. The faster you grow, the more cash you need. Why is that?
Well, again, some companies are structured that volume is very positive to cash. Yeah. So if I'm in a construction company, my margins are small, but I'm invoicing in advance. I bill my work often before I've done it, and I use my suppliers, my trades. I pay them slower than what I collect. So I've got negative working capital. So the next dollar you sell, you make more margin and you've got working capital gains. The problem is when you slow down your revenue growth and you start to decline, you've got to repay that working capital. However, what I'm saying, I'm going to make a statement, and most people will be saying, I've got no idea what Alan's saying. Every business should be able to create a cash flow ladder. In other words, when you look at your business, you say, let me segment my business by business unit or by customer type, and let's create a ladder. Where do I make the most money to the least money?
Okay.
I want to grow where I make money, re-engineer where I'm not making money. And on nearly every company I work with, that's one of the exercises we do, is firstly, understand the company as a whole, understand your power of one, and then you segment your company and you say, the next dollar I sell to this segment, how much cash do I make? So many companies I walk into are selling to segments that are actually negative to cash flow, and they've got no idea.
Yeah, I've seen that all the time. But because they don't understand the numbers, they still believe that growing revenue solves everything. And then you pay your salespeople commission on revenue, but they're making a decision that's so detrimental to cash. And that's why I'm saying once the numbers are understood. So many people listening to your podcast today say to themselves, I don't share numbers. Yeah. The beauty about the power of one is you're only sharing the impact of change. Nobody is seeing your profit or your cash, but they're seeing the impact of a 1% or 1 day change. So that's really important. Let's get to the fear of showing numbers, because we get a lot of CEOs that have a lot of fear and they show numbers to a team, and then the team cannot take decisions based on data because they don't know the numbers. So yes, cash story shows you the impact of the 1%, but doesn't show you the bottom line or the real number. Is that by design, how you do it like that, and how you use it to show the rest of the team? What do you tell the CEO for them to allow you to show it to the rest of the team?
So the first question, many CEOs say, you know what, we're a private company. We don't want people to know how much we're earning. Yeah. I don't agree with that, because I believe, like Leicester City, everyone needs to know your score and how to improve it. But I say time will change that. But you need to start off empowering the people. The power of one will list your 7 levers. Input equals output. You fix your power of one, or you improve it, you mind the gap, you'll improve your profit, you'll improve your cash, and you'll put your valuation on steroids. So the first thing I would do as a company is look at cash flow story, look at your power of one, and then run a workshop with your senior management team. Put the 7 levers down the side of a whiteboard: price, volume, margins, overheads, receivables, inventory, WIP, and payables. Lever by lever workshop with your team. You then rank each idea from most to least sensitive. At the end of the workshop, choose the top 5 or 6 most sensitive items. And you repeat this process every single quarter. And then your flywheel of cash eventually will start to improve.
All right. Let's use the last 5 or so minutes now talking about you as a business owner. You've scaled 2 businesses. One first with the software of banking, and now with software to CEOs. What do you focus on as a leader in scaling a company? What has worked for you? What do you recommend other CEOs to do?
Okay, so the first thing, that's why I'm absolutely the greatest fan of the concept of scaling up. So Daniel, I'm not a consultant. Companies say to me, Alan, do you do consulting? And the first thing I say to them, well, consultant means the first thing I'm going to do is con you, then I'm going to insult you. So no, I don't do that.
No.
So
all right.
I'm joking with you. That's what, but I prefer to sit on a board and say to the company, and typically the boards that I sit on, we meet quarterly.
Yeah.
And it's designed to go through, are we getting the right team of A players? Do we have a strategy that's differentiated? What are the cost structures we can eliminate? And then the cash, the power of one, and I go through profit, I go through working capital, and I go through your cash flow. So those are the things I present in a board meeting. Everybody understands what needs to be done in a company. We're focusing on the main things, as Verne says, and the company, I'm saying, without fail, if you can start to force the company in each one of these areas to make the right decisions, slowly but surely, your business flywheel starts to turn. And as I said, some of the exits that I've had in companies, I look back 3 years before. The companies were worth very little. 3 years later, everything's working. How did it happen? It was these small changes every quarter, repeated over and over again. But I can also just make the point that when I first joined board meetings and I listened to the financial discussion, nobody wants to discuss the numbers. Well, they say, let's take this as read. Yeah. Let's look at our profit. Let's look at our revenue. And it's such a discussion with adding no value.
So as a CEO of a company, you want to align the decisions of the company to have a financial impact. Most of them, they do it based on revenue. But as we discussed, cash flow or profit is way more important. Your team is also trained to talk about revenue growth, and they don't care about the impact it will have. They just care about revenue growth. And they put it like a badge of honor. Hey, I've grown 20% or 30% or whatever. How can you get them to change their mind? And what kind of examples can you give them as a CEO? Imagine you're talking to a CEO that wants to convince the team. What would you tell them? How can they do that with the team?
Okay, so you asked a very difficult question. What I do is so one of the biggest CEO forums I work with in the world is a group called Vistage or Tech. Yep. They're massive. They're all over the world. And one of the first things they do in the meeting, the chair says to the CEOs, how are you feeling out of 10? And how's your business performing out of 10?
Yep.
And I've done literally 300 to 400 tech groups around the world. And every single CEO I ever meet, they give a rating of 7, 8, 9 out of 10. Business is always fairly good because they're in front of their peers.
Yep.
And then I finish my presentation and I go to the same CEOs, tell me how you think you're doing. And their rating completely changes. Because the way CEOs are looking at their numbers is revenue growth, margins, profit, and it's all about chapter 1. And then you start to show them that they're profitable, but they got no cash. And they got no strategy to really engage or help their people make better decisions. So it's like painting a big, taking a big white screen and you paint a black dot. Everyone describes the black dot because that's what they see.
Yep.
The white screen are the 7 levers. Your white screen is not revenue and margins. These are part of the solution. Imagine if everyone in your company with every single transaction is saying to themselves, what can I do with these little levers? Can I change a 1% or a 1 day? You start to empower your people. You're going to have a very different quality CEO.
Right. And going back to you helping companies sell and evaluation and you coaching the CEO through the process, what's happening out there today in the market? 2 years after COVID, we had a huge problem with team members. You mentioned retention and attraction. You mentioned all the supply chain. You mentioned inflation. What's the best way today to prepare a company to be sell for a premium and be able to do what you do in the next 2-3 years and really be able to have a great exit after this?
So I say to every company I ever meet, what are we going to do to get you to double industry benchmark?
Industry benchmark. In
So,
profit, the growth in what?
So in other words, if your industry is generating 8 to 10% operating profit, EBIT, I'm saying, how are we going to get you to 20%? What are the changes we need to do? We'll get you the best people over time. So we'll get you the team of A players. We'll absolutely nail your strategy. Well, as I said, we'll get execution spot on. And then we'll generate a company who's absolutely cash positive. Then you can use this cash to do acquisitions, to grow your business. You cannot grow a business if you've got no cash. Verne, when he introduces me, the one time he said, and I loved it, you can survive with decent people. You can survive with decent strategy and decent execution, but run out of cash and it's game over. So many companies, absolutely, growth sucks cash. What I want to get a company to do is to understand what color code green looks like in their financial levers, force the company to run properly, and then to become a cash machine and to use that cash to fund your growth, which will then obviously impact valuation significantly.
What I always come out when I talk to you is the importance of looking at the numbers and really take decisions based on numbers, but most important, the discipline. You mentioned it all the time. Quarter over quarter, small changes, 1%, 1 day, quarter over quarter, consistently. 3 years, your cash is completely different. And of course, your valuation is completely different. You're able to attract better team members and, of course, operate better than the industry.
And Daniel, historically, when I did board meetings, we used to start with finance last. Now we start with finance first. Because I'm saying before you can develop your rocks or your goals for the period, you need to know what your story is. You need to know, is your story on track? Because that will drive a lot of your decisions, your strategic decisions. Yeah. So even now, during COVID, when supply chain was bad, a lot of my advice to people was, you can't get stock, hold more stock. if you're an importer, distributor, manufacturer. Increase inventory holdings. Your suppliers were asking to get paid faster. Your margins were dropping. And then you start to show the company, can I show you the impact of supply chain? You now tell me how to fix it. And I can tell you the salespeople become part of the solution, not become part of the problem. They say to you,
understand how to be a solution.
They realize what's happened to us and they say, well, I've got to be part of the solution. Absolutely, we can put prices up in these areas.
Now they're eager to raise prices.
Yes, companies in COVID who were cash flow geniuses built up a fortress balance sheet that helped them survive. A lot of companies made a lot of money through COVID. I can tell you now, a lot of companies were in industries where you got hammered. But I can tell you, never before has cash been more important in a business. 2022, 2023, every single listener you've got out there, make sure the power of one becomes the DNA of your company. The power of one is not about financial reporting. It's about improvement. It's not about what is my CFO reporting. It's about what are you doing as a CEO. The CEO controls the company, the marketing, the sales, the operational people, the financial people. You, CEO, own the power of one.
Love it. Alan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much. And he will bring back the discipline and the sanity to understand the numbers and take decisions based on numbers and not just of I think or I want or whatever. So I really appreciate that. And you bring a lot of discipline to the board. I've been using your tool for many years, and the discipline that you bring to the discussion on the board, it's amazing. So thank you for that.
Thanks so much, Daniel.